This is not a message for everyone. This is a transmission for the star seeds, for those of you who know or suspect that you are something different, something unusual, not of this place. These are the messages for you that I, as the host of the MaxAnte, are bringing to you. Don't expect anything here to make a lot of sense. Everything is entirely paradoxical and is for you to interpret and for you to discern what is true. Why do this? Or rather, even more so, why do anything? The easiest way for me to probably explain it is somewhat like an offering. So I get these messages, these clear transmissions from, well, we could call them the star beings, the sky beings, those who it appears that they live beyond the dome. And my experience with them has been that they peer down, they look down and they offer guidance. I presume that others have called them angels or divas or different names. I don't understand what they are, except that the guidance that they offer is remarkably positive. So that's the only way I can point to why listen to them, why trust them. It comes down to trust and allegiance. I spoke about this before, about what is it that you are aligned to? Where do you place your trust? Because if we place our trust in the default mega culture, then this would all sound absurd. But understand that when you're aligned with the mega default culture, then maybe you aren't even really thinking your own thoughts. You could, of course, turn that back to me and say, well, how do you know that this is really you? Well, as I've already said, there is actually no you. That's another proposition coming from the megaculture. So they want you to believe, they being the superstructures, the organizations of the mega superstructure here, they want you to believe that there is a you, that you are the priority here, that you need to be feeling like it's your life, that you are in control. But really, break it down. Have a look. How much of what is going on around you has really come from you? Isn't it possible that all of your ideals and goals and viewpoints have been concocted by the mega culture that has now sprawled the entire world? I just was thinking it's quite interesting if we consider this word culture. Firstly, there is obviously the reference to being a cult. So everything here that's running is a cult, whether large or small. So maybe we think of cults as like a crazy group of like 100 people all gathering together and worshipping goats and other crazy stuff. But when you have massive cult, like a religion, let's say Catholicism, because it has 1 billion or whatever people, it's no longer considered a cult. It's considered a religion. And so people put their allegiance, their alliance to bigger groups because they feel more confidence. They think, well, if 1 billion people are believing this, it must be true. And so you would be thinking the same thing, because there's also the cult of atheism. There is the cult of science. The larger the group of people, the more confidence that you have, because you lack confidence in yourself within. And so when you look within, you go, well, I don't really know what's going on. And these people over here, they sound very confident, because it all comes back to confidence. People are desperately seeking confidence here. They don't know why they're alive. They don't know why they were born. They don't know why they're here. They think that people around them know something. They think, oh, well, these other humans, they must They must know something. They've been here even longer than me, like my parents, these teachers, they're 30, 40, 50, 60 years old or whatever. They must have some sort of clue around what's going on. So I'll listen to them. I won't pay attention to what is arising within this consciousness when I'm tapped into nature. What if you had the supposition that none of the humans had a clue what was going on, that all of them had a bias, that all of them were plugged into something that was actually trying to keep you suppressed, under control, a very useful entity in the mega structure here? And back to that word cult-ure. So inside the culture, if we look at the different meanings, obviously there's the definition of it being about the arts, but what about the biological meaning? I've just looked it up, and the verb, which is the action of culture, is to maintain conditions suitable for growth. So you see, all the organizations of the world are cultures. Their entire objective is to maintain a condition for growth. You are nothing more than a piece in their collective organization to maintain growth. And once you step beyond that boundary, once you are no longer a part of their mega structure to continue their growth, you are no longer useful. I don't know about you, but I've been part of several cults, several groups, and as soon as I stepped beyond their boundary, they completely dispensed with me. The longest one I was part of was that Goenka cult, there for 20 plus years. And once I transgressed their particular rule set, I was completely ostracized, completely cut out. I was no longer part of the culture. I was actually harmful here because I was no longer going to be maintaining their growth. You see, what all these cults want to do, whether you're part of some mega cult like Catholicism or Buddhism or atheism or scientism, whatever it is, see, some of them have different stipulations, like they want you to speak in a politically correct way. They want you to look a certain way. They all have their certain garments. So if you're part of the corporate megaculture, well, you have to wear your little suit and tie and blazer and so forth, then you fit in, then you look good. If you're part of like the hippie cults or like, let's say, these quasi spiritual groups, then, you need to look more laid back, maybe have some piercings, I don't know, tattoos, wear like loose outfits, whatever. You see, it's all about fitting in to the mega culture or the smaller cults. You see, it doesn't really matter because so long as you're aligned with a group, then you are enabling it to propagate. You're a part of the organizational growth. And so why do this? Because, people don't know what else to do. They're thinking, I'm alive and I want to be part of something. See, where does that even come from? This idea, I want to be part of something. So you just pick randomly, there's probably, let's say, 100,000 things plus to be a part of. And we tend to want to gravitate to that which makes us feel more confident because there's such a lack of confidence within because we're so profoundly disconnected from nature. You see, it's this disconnection from nature, from our original nature, that the cults play upon, that the organizational megastructures play upon. They know. In fact, they've organized your disconnection. See, you were grown here for their purpose. How was it that the population, apparently, if that's even true, grew so much in the last century, the last 100 years, where they told us that there was about a billion people in the world at around 1900, and suddenly within 100 years there's 7.6 billion people? Maybe I haven't met 7.6 billion people. I don't know if you have. I've certainly been to 50 plus countries around the world, traveling as far and wide as I can to, and it looks like, yeah, sure, there's a lot of people. I don't know if there's that many people, but to keep everybody in line, so when you've got so many millions or billions of people to manage, you see, imagine this, imagine if you were having to manage all of these people, then you want to keep them in line, you want to keep them part of groups, you want to keep them, towing the line and, being kind of afraid that if they step out, that they'll miss out. And so you're going to make sure that they are afraid of the financial consequences. And if you can't get them there, make them afraid of the spiritual consequences. And so keep them, always guessing, going, I better do this over here. I better tick these boxes. I better fulfill upon these obligations here. Because once I do all those things, then I'll be able to stay in the group. And if I stay in the group, then they will support me and I can survive. I can survive. You see, it all comes back to that. The whole direction here is the belief in yourself. You see, because you believe in yourself, you think that there is something to protect. You think that you are someone here. And because of that, you think, well, I better protect this. Because when they placed that egoic structure in you, organizationally, the whole superstructure of the cult-ure here, designed to propagate the belief in the identity, the fictitious identity that drives you, that pushes you to do everything every day, especially to maintain the allegiance to the groups, or the group, the particular one that you're aligned to. Then you have to keep feeding it. You have to keep feeding this egoic structure all the time. And it grew in you very slowly at first. Maybe one way of thinking of it is like a virus. You see, once the egoic virus was set up here in this world, it was able to propagate itself. It was able to spread. It's hard to say what was here before. Was there a different kind of situation in this world? Quite possibly. Quite possibly this was an entirely different situation here in this realm. Maybe it was always like this, but maybe it wasn't always like this. We have, all the organizations, all the educational institutions, they tell us the history of the world and how everything was structured. Maybe. But because they've set up their superstructure to keep you employed with their, degrees and certificates and so forth, which is what you are aligning yourself to, then you want to go along with what they're saying. Because when you go along with what they're saying and they're teaching, you get to fit in. And so that becomes the priority. Now, what happens when you see through all of that? What happens when you realize that it's all a house of cards built by billions, maybe, of people who are all just believing something? You see, and then they bring in scientism and they'd have this evidence that they point to. But when everything is coordinated and all the media is pushing a certain message and you don't even have the credentials, let alone the equipment yourself to do your own testing because it's expensive, then you have to rely upon their expertise to tell you what's going on, which then comes back to your belief structure, because you're believing that this person over here knows what they're talking about because they've got these degrees from the organizational structure that then is employing them and paying them. Is there any vested interests here? Do these people who work for these organizations, do they actually have a vested interest in staying aligned to them? Of course they do. They want their paycheck. Maybe even beyond that, they want to feel special. They have some prestige. They want to maintain a position of power. Is that what's going on here? Is this entire superstructure, this game that's getting played out here, is this a game of power? So when you start breaking it down and looking at it like that, everything here is about power and domination and getting the different groups to be split up. You see, the more splinters that you have, the more divided all the people are, the more power that each person loses, while others gain more power from the dispersing of everybody. So it's hard to actually believe anyone because of their actual allegiances to these groups and their vested interests. So when I question, why am I doing this? Well, I'm not looking to any other people anymore, because who are the people? What are they hosts for? What are they aligned to? Who can you trust here? Because everybody here has an allegiance. Maybe not everybody, but it sure looks like that when you break it down. And because they're kept so busy, you see, because you're so busy with the debts and the workload and keeping on top of everything and checking out your Instagram and your Facebook every day because that's such a priority, then you have very little time to actually investigate what's going on here. You have very little time to even question what's going on here. In fact, the very nature of critical thought is, well, definitely not even taught anymore, is not encouraged anymore. And so you perhaps don't even know what that's like. Critical thought, examining things, because you're always going to come from a position. So when you're coming from a position that you're so certain of, like the ground that you stand upon, your certainty of where you stand in life, that gives you the confidence to take your position. But what if you even turn the scrutiny of critical thinking to the very foundations that you're believing in? Where would that lead you? And if each step along the way is questioned, like if you question, why am I believing this? Why am I aligned to these particular these particular organizations over here? Do they really have the answers? And then you just keep on dissecting it, pulling this apart every step of the way. And it takes you into a very peculiar direction, because things can go in a direction where they cease to be concepts, where you actually become physically confronted by the nature, the truth of what's going on here. When you start to have these radical encounters with a totally different reality, what is there to question? Because, well, obviously you can still question that, but as everything starts to fall away, you start to realize that nothing was as it seems, and no one knew what they were talking about, because they were always spinning something to keep you part of the organizational growth that would keep everything moving forward. But where is it moving forward to? And what are you really part of? Where is this taking you? Where is this taking all of us? That is something that's interesting to look into.